So, great to be here, Mark, and looking back into 1 Corinthians 2.
Yeah.
And we're looking at kind of 3 areas today, what we understand. That's maturity, delighting in God, and the amazing thing, which I think is phenomenal, that God has prepared a place for us.
Right.
So we're tackling those areas. So just before we start, I'd just like to read this out.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want us to read it in unison? Because we're like dressed exactly the same. So like...
Yeah, but great minds think alike.
It's good. All right, read it up.
Cool, yeah. Yet among the mature we do not impart wisdom, although it is not a wisdom of this age, or the rulers of this age, who are doomed to pass away. But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor heart of man imagined what God has prepared for those that love him. That's phenomenal. So what I'd like to touch on the first thing, just to ask you, you talked about there's kind of 2 categories, okay? That those that are mature and not mature, and the kind of difference of these, and what it kind of means to be kind of mature. And so what do you feel about that?
Well, I think that Paul's kind of setting up this, and then later in verse 14 he talks about the spiritual and the natural person. And I think the point is that when we come to a place of ultimate maturity and ultimate wisdom, it's all upside down, because a worldly level wisdom looks like a rejection of the cross, because it looks like you're smarter than God. And so it looks like you're mature, and that people who believe in God are childish and simple and whatever. But in the end, when the final account is done and the veil is torn back, the reality is going to be the opposite. Right. That true wisdom actually comes about through believing the foolishness of God, and that's true maturity. And so in the end, someone who's believed in Christ, Paul says, that's the mature person, because they've come, as that analogy with the art or whatever, they've come to actually appreciate a thing that the rest of the world just walks by and takes selfies about, or doesn't listen to, because it's just like, it's the cross.
So there's a big difference between the wisdom of this age and the wisdom of this cross. But we seem to get so caught up in that. Right.
Well, we don't want to look dumb.
Yeah.
No one sitting in these rooms right now wants to be made fun of.
Yeah.
Our souls are so sensitive. It's like we don't want to be persecuted. I actually read a story this morning in the New York Times. Did you read about the guy who went to this island in the Indian Ocean because he wanted to reach all these people? Right. He was a Christian, and everyone said you can't go there because they're like very like. They don't let anyone come there. There's like 50 of them there, which is the islanders. Yeah. And they don't let anyone come there, and they'll like kill you. Like they've killed people before. Right. And so he convinced these 7 boat guys to bring him there. And over the course of a night or two, under the cloud of darkness or whatever, got on a kayak and went in. They started shouting at him and throwing arrows at his kayak or whatever. So he came back and regrouped, has his Bible, he wants to go tell them about Jesus, and he goes on the island, and they spear him to death, and they killed him and dragged his body out, and all the fishermen are watching this happen, and now it's like a thing. This is literally the New York Times this morning. Wow. And he's like a 28-year-old guy. He's like, I need to tell these people about Jesus. Yeah. Because there's a place in the world that doesn't know. Yeah. So he was, of course, and then the world looks at it and goes, he was trying to convert them and be, bring disease or whatever. Yeah. It's like, he's trying to, So anyway, but point being, this guy felt persecution. That's real. He went into it. So he kind of called it out himself. But the point being, our soft, egos can't even handle a little bit of being made fun of by our friends or whatever. And so that's why I think people obsess about it. We want to look smart. We want to look sophisticated. Yeah. We want to look like we have reputation. We want to look like we have status and be Christians at the same time. And this is always going to be a tension, because Jesus said, if they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you. Yeah. This is always going to look stupid to the world. Unless, as Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 2, God takes the blinders off and actually let someone see. And that's what I think this text is about.
Okay, cool. So let's gather that as a group. Let's think about the difference between the wisdom of the cross and the wisdom of this age. And let's think also about what it means to be mature and discuss that. Okay. So if we look into verse 6 and 7, we see that this age is doomed to pass away.
Yeah.
You know, you think about the cities that we have like New York, Vancouver, London, you think, man, these things have stood for like eons.
Right.
How could they ever like pass away? But this is what Paul is saying.
Right.
And just pulling out kind of Ephesians 4, how do we, if we look into that, it talks about putting off our old self and putting on our new self and kind of living for God in that, so that we're not just caught up in this kind of doomed scenario, that we're separate from it.
Yeah.
How can we do that, Mark? How can we?
Well, I think even the theology of things. I think what he's talking about is like the people, the structures that are proud and think that they're everything are going to come to nothing. Like I've talked about this. You don't know. Go around the room and name the name, first and last name of your great grandfather. Go back 3 generations, even 2. Most of you. Wouldn't know their name. And if I showed you a picture of them right now, you wouldn't even pick them out of a crowd. Right? And that's your blood. That's what he's talking. He's saying this is how fragile we are. All these power structures that, think that they're so smart and great are going to be gone. All the things like the boast, the humankind boasts of building the Titanic, this tiny little ship, or a city, or whatever. All this stuff, God is so much bigger than this that all these things look very small when you view it. Now, I don't believe that. I believe God is in the renewal movement. I believe that the new creation is something that we need to move toward and live for in the present time and all of that. So I don't think God's going to kind of throw the world in a garbage can, and go, oh, this is I think there's a renewal thing that's going to happen, and there's a cross that needs to take place, and however all that works out. But so I think we need to, Ephesians 4, coming back to that, this putting off the old self, putting on the new self. There's that dual thing. It's not just about, okay, so I'm living in a context where all these things that the world boasts in, that you boast in, that your friends boast in, the status, the money, the fame, whatever your list is, all of them are going to come to nothing in the sense that in the new creation, Jesus is going to be ultimate treasure, and then the experiences and the rewards he gives and all the stuff he talks about. And that's why in the present we need to put on the new, not just get rid of sin, but actually put on the new self, get godliness, holiness, righteousness, sanctification in our life. Because of that reality that is coming to us in the future. We're preparing not for the next 40 years, but for the next 40 million.
So this is eternity.
Right. You got to invest when you think about your money or your family or your whatever. It's like I've talked about this, I think, in the marriage series, where I talked about the idea that the reason I want Erin to be godly isn't because I have a responsibility for her to have a good 30 years. It's because if I can help her be more godly, she's going to have a better 30 million years, right? And my responsibility is actually to make her 30 million and 300 million and 3 billion and quadrillion, zillions, whatever, great. And if that's my responsibility, why would I let her just get a little bit of God and not plow after getting the most of him she can get in this life so that echoes out into eternity? So anyway, I think that's all wrapped up in what he's talking about.
Okay, so let's discuss that at the group. Let's think about that Ephesians 4 scripture, how we can put off the old self and put on the new self, and ensure that we're kind of living for God, and recognise, even though this world is doomed, ultimately it will end. But like Mark mentioned, we are in a kind of restorative situation where we can actually pray for our cities, pray for our towns, pray for our communities, that God will restore them through him working through us. So let's discuss that. The last thing I'd like to tackle, Mark, is this whole idea at the back end of these verses, getting into chapter 2, is that God has prepared a place for us. And that kind of blows my imagination. In fact, it blows all the fuses.
Yeah.
That weak, sinful us, that God has prepared this place for us. And just looking at John 14, Jesus says, "In my Father's house there are many rooms, and I've prepared a place for you." And also Revelation 21, where it talks about, "I've seen a new heaven and a new earth, this holy city, where we're going to dwell with God."
Yeah.
So what I'd like to ask you about, what do you feel about this kind of place that God has prepared for us, and do we deserve it?
Well, we don't deserve it. But, once we have the righteousness of Christ, then obviously we can enter it. But I think that there's a few things about it. The most important thing is God is there. You get God. That's the most important thing. All the pleasure, every pleasure that we have on this earth, think of the thing that is the most pleasurable thing you can think of.
Yeah.
Is just like a weed coming up out of a crack of concrete that's like, hey, here's a little echo of what this actually is. When you pull the veil back, and it's going to be like an experience beyond anything that we've been able to imagine. That's what Paul says in the verses. So I think that's knowing that. I mean, go read Revelation 21, 22. Go read Romans 8. Go read 1 Corinthians 15. Philippians 3. These passages that talk about what this is like.
Yeah.
And these are all just hints and echoes, all of that. But, they give you a picture of what's coming, and then it has all these present day applications. Like, in the midst of suffering then, you can wake up in the morning and you can face the day, and because this is your ultimate destiny in a sense, but the cool thing about it too in Christian theology is it's not karma, it's not cyclical reincarnation, and so Christians should actually work for justice now, because you only get one life, and you want to see as many people experience this great delight and pleasure as possible. You're not going to get another shot at it. Where if we're in a cycle, we don't have to work for justice now. We can maybe do it in the next life, or not resolve people's suffering or whatever. So I think that picture of heaven proper. And now, of course, we've got that. We've messed that up, and we've made it spiritual. And I've talked about this oftentimes. And maybe you guys can talk about that. But that classic upbringing picture of heaven is a spiritual place. Yeah. And the earth right now is a physical place. And I think that's not the picture of Judeo-Christian presentation. Whether you go back to Ezekiel 36 and 37 and it's resurrection, or Daniel chapter 12, resurrection, John chapter 5, resurrection, 1 Corinthians 15, everything's re-embodiment, re-physicality, new creation, new heaven, new earth, or what Randy Alcorn calls in the sense of the resurrect, or the new earth, in the sense of like there's an actual, in Revelation 21, 22, the New Jerusalem comes down from heaven, under earth there's this renewal thing. So it's a physical place, and you go in and you read those chapters, and there's things happening. It's crazy. Yeah. It's not, like I said, it's not this Apple Store, it's not clouds. You got kings coming in. What are they coming from? What's going on right now? What are you talking about? Yeah. There's all these interesting things. And so, I think one of the best resources for this is actually Alcorn's book called Heaven, where he talks about how there'll be development, how there'll be technology. He asks all these crazy, there'll be conversations, there'll be things, and even the parables of Jesus where he's like, you're going to rule this city, and then you're going to rule this many cities. And you don't want to push these things into stark literalism, but there's a sense of responsibility and stewardship still happening. It's not like we're just sitting there. Yeah, on the hops. There's like stuff to do, which is beautiful, because you go back to Genesis 1 and 2, and God puts you in the garden, and he goes, okay, you're physical, first off. So you're never going to get an appetite for non-physicality, which is why the classic picture of heaven, people are like, I can't get an appetite for that. It's like, because you weren't built to be non-spiritual. You were built to be physical. Yeah. And so that's like trying to get an appetite for grass. It's like you weren't built to eat grass. Yeah. So you're not gonna love it. Yeah. And so anyway, so there's this reality of the physical and adventure and stewardship and development and all. So anyway, get a clear picture of heaven first. This place he's prepared beyond your imagination, as Paul says in those verses. Get that in your brain first, and then start to work through the implications. Evangelistically, it means you want to bring as many people to this point of pleasure as possible. from a personal perspective, you want to enjoy the kind of delight and pleasure forevermore as much as possible.
Yeah.
Which means there's going to be different levels of your experience, I think. I don't think everyone's going to necessarily experience it. I think most passages that talk about the new creation talk about these different, you're going to be, evaluated by what you've done. Every Romans 2, John 5, Revelation 21, Matthew 25, it's all like, and books were opened, and they asked you what you did, and then you went to judgment or reward based on what you did. Jesus talked in the Sermon on the Mount, you're going to get reward, you're going to get reward. I don't think everyone's experience is going to be the same. I think there's going to be these, so what you do now in the present with your own sanctification, your own justice, your own life, actually matters.
Really matters.
Talking about, similar to the last question. So, anyway, so let me ask you, what has been your view of this heaven, this place that God's prepared? How has it impacted your life personally, either in a time of difficulty or a time of joy, or like really practically in your life, how's it impacted? Versus a different worldview, which might be the universe is cold, or we reincarnate, whatever. Christianity in the marketplace of ideas, what has it done for you?
I think it changes your whole outlook. Philippines 2 talks about being citizens of heaven. Mm-hmm. I think it is hard for us to get our head around this, because it's so big and it's so amazing, and yet we're called to it. And one of your favourite authors, C.S. Lewis, talks about, we're coming to this country at last. Yeah. And so there is a sense of, we don't know everything, but how it should affect the now, how it's affected me, is that when I've hit a tough situation, like we lost a son, we had twins, and that wasn't an easy thing to go through.
Right away, like at birth? Yeah. Like shortly after birth? Yeah.
So for me, almost, it may sound a bit weird, I had a vision of him almost. I feel like God just give me that. Yeah. And he was about, I thought, well, how old is he? About 30 or something. And it's like he's with me. Wow. So it was that idea that, yes, I'd like to hang on to him. Right. Yes, I'd like to enjoy him like my other son James, all that kind of stuff. But I also know that where he is, it's better. Yeah, it's better. And so we watched a lot of parents in that scenario that didn't know Jesus go down, like deep depression. Of course. But for us, this lifted off, and God took us through it. Yeah. So I mean, that's just one situation. But God, I believe God can take it.
So why don't we talk about that in the group? How has the understanding of eternal life and the new creation and heaven as this gift you are going to get because you've trusted in Jesus? If you have, maybe some of you haven't, you can talk about that too. How has that given you strength or motivation or comfort, or how has it impacted your life as you live it in the day-to-day?
So hey guys, thanks again for being with us. We'd just like you to pray about youth ministries this time. So that's young adult groups and students and our youth ministries, in particular those people that have been going through midterms and then kind of their finals. Let's pray about them as a group. And thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week.